Welcome into Sports Memos Betting Podcast, college football, every game on the board, segment number 3. Robbie Veno with me. Rob, welcome in. How you doing?
I am doing great today, Drew. Weather's a little rough around me tonight, but we're doing good.
Good, man. Good to hear you're staying warm up there in the Northeast. We got Robbie Veno. Follow him on Twitter at Rob Veno Sports, breaking down the next set of games here. We got Oregon State at Cal in the Pac-12, Robbie. Looks like 51.5 the total. 11 is what the Golden Bears are laying at home.
Yeah, and it's interesting, Drew, because I feel like California has become the Pac-12 version of San Diego State, right? I mean, you don't want to lay points with a team that can't score points, a defensive-minded team that can't score points. That being said, last year, California basically the same type team, Oregon State the same type team, and Cal wins 49-7 in an offensive outburst. You know, the Cal offense winds up taking advantage of the Oregon State defense, which was the worst unit on the field and will be the worst unit on the field again. So while it's a little shaky to lay 11 with Cal, last year's example could, you know, for those who like the Golden Bears, it would ease your mind a little bit to play them. Cal just hasn't scored points. The offense is ranked 113th in the nation, but Oregon State, like I say, the defense is that poor. I think maybe, Drew, in this game you could get to over. Oregon State is able to score on just about anybody right now with Jake Luton at quarterback. And using last year as an example, I think that's what's going to happen this year. I think Cal will be able to finally move the football a little bit. Remember, Devin Monster is the quarterback here. Chase Garber's out, but Monster has played the last couple of games now, certainly a veteran from UCLA. So maybe we could look towards over, but I don't have a play on the game. I wouldn't, argue anybody who liked to play side here either way.
Staying in the Pac-12 North here, we got Oregon at Washington, a big one in the Pac-12, and it looks like the Ducks laying 2.5 or 3 as we're talking, Robbie. Important one to shop around. We're seeing a total of 50, and when you think, Jacob Eason and Herbert, the two quarterbacks here, you don't think of a total, 49.5 even, but these two defenses, especially Oregon, surprising. Very good defense, 4 straight unders, I believe. I kind of like the under here, Robbie. How do you feel?
Yeah, I couldn't disagree with that, Drew. I mean, that Oregon defense has been lights out all season long. And Washington has had their share of problems offensively with good defenses. It doesn't happen all the time, Drew. I mean, there's no blanket statement saying that Team A played Team B, and so it equals out to C. But there's a couple of common opponents here that I think you can use for a pretty good comparison. Oregon and Washington have both played Stanford and Cal. Oregon beat them both straight up. Oregon covered against Stanford. Washington lost to both and lost outright to both. And, they got outgained by both of those teams. The Washington offense just hadn't seemed to get untracked against better defenses, where Oregon seems to be good right now, balanced against anybody. Now, there's a big injury in this game. Jacob Breland, the tight end for Oregon, out. However, they got a couple of wide receivers back the last couple of weeks. Michael Pittman from USC, his little brother, a highly touted freshman, made some catches last week. Brendan Schooler, a senior who had some action last year. So maybe they can make up for the absence of the tight end there. But I just like their offensive balance. I like Herbert. Love that defense. And Washington probably in the trenches in this game, I think is going to be in a little bit of trouble. I find Oregon's offensive line and defensive line to be better than what Washington State has on both sides of the ball.
Robbie, let's head to the third straight Pac-12 game with one on deck as well. We got Arizona at USC here. Trojans laying 10 or 9.5 in the Coliseum, 67 the total.
Yeah, this goes under the category that odds makers aren't dumb because I was hoping for this number to come a little bit lower, Drew. I really wanted to play USC in this game. They've been battle tested the last 3. Played Utah, beat them outright. Played Washington and lost 28-14. Didn't cover, but they outgained Washington in that game. Pretty good performance by USC. Then last week at Notre Dame, Keaton Slovis comes back at quarterback, and they're down 20-3 in South Bend in the third quarter and rally all the way back to a 30-27 loss. Pretty easy cover for USC in that game, as it turns out. So Utah, Washington, and Notre Dame, USC showed well in all 3. Clay Helton said he's really excited for the rest of the season with his team, and I could see why. They look pretty good, as opposed to Arizona, which had played a schedule full of cupcakes, then plays Washington last week, a team that can pressure. Washington winds up getting 4 sacks, 4 takeaways. The second half is an Arizona disaster, and Washington winds up winning by 24. So I don't know if Arizona, despite the positive early season results, was ready for the step up. And I think USC's going to be in pretty good form the rest of the way out. Back to the odds maker comment to start this. My power ratings made the game USC 10.5. The line sits right there. So it's difficult to play value wise, but I do think USC is the superior team at this point in time. It would be USC or nothing for me.
All right, Robbie, let's finish off this 4-pack of Pac-12 games, not 12-pack games, although have made that mistake before. We got Colorado at Washington State here. 71 the total, Robbie. High total here with the Cougs laying 12.5 in Pullman.
Yeah, rightfully so, because both defenses are the worst units on the field. I mean, Washington State, passing-wise, into this Colorado defense, which has just been decimated by injuries. 4 defensive backs out for the season, 3 defensive linemen questionable for this. About 6 in total preseason or season opening starters that won't be involved in this game for Colorado. And we see it in the results. They've allowed 31 points to everybody this year, at least 31 to everybody this year. So you take Anthony Gordon in that passing game against Colorado, we can see points all game long, all 60 minutes. The other side of that equation is Colorado last week gets Laviska Shenault back. They get KD Nixon back. That whole core of skill position players are there for Steven Montez, and Washington State's defense has been an absolute disaster, whether it be Tracy Claeys or firing Tracy Claeys and assigning co-coordinators. The defense in the last 3 games has allowed an average of 572 yards per game, 48 points, 657 against UCLA, 526 against Utah, 532 last week against Herm Edwards, Arizona State Sun Devils, which weren't, they weren't moving the football against anybody. So it shows you the numbers aren't skewed. The defenses are bad. Problem is in Pullman, there's going to be rain. Seems like there's always rain in that Pacific Northwest area. Maybe it slows it down a little bit. Washington State's used to it. Colorado isn't. 71's a high number, Drew. But, boy, it would be hard for me to play this game under with the way the defenses are playing right now.
Good stuff, Robbie. Out west, we'll head east here for an SEC East matchup. We got the Florida Gators, South Carolina Gamecocks here, with the Gators laying 5 now, even down to as low as 4.5. This number's moving against me, Rob. I like the Gators on the road here to kind of bounce back against the Gamecocks, who, spot-wise, not pointing towards Will Muschamp's group, in my opinion. We're seeing a low total, sub 50 here, sitting at 48 in Columbia on Saturday.
Yeah, I agree with you. The spot, to me, favors Florida. They come off the disappointing loss to LSU, but I think anybody who watched that game saw. I think that's more of a positive statement for Florida than it is an indictment of LSU's defense. Florida played very good offensively in that game, and they got worn down. Let's face it, the tempo took advantage of Florida, finally wore them out in the fourth quarter. Then you have South Carolina off a 21-point underdog outright victory over Georgia. I think the spot certainly favors Florida. In fact, Will Muschamp, Drew, in reading earlier today, said he really doesn't know how his team's going to react because they've never been in this situation before. So how do you know? Yeah. The bad news for Florida here would come point spread wise. If you're playing technical trends, South Carolina 3-0 against the spread at home, Florida 0-3 against the spread away from home. One of those games is a neutral site against Miami, but South Carolina at home has been money all season long. The numbers come down, in my estimation, because Ryan Helinski's going to play. He gets hurt last week. He and Brian Edwards, the number 1 wide receiver, both go down in the same play. Georgia still can't win that football game. But they had +4 in the turnover column. Probably not going to get +4 in the turnover column here. Georgia outgained South Carolina by 200-plus yards in that contest. So, the final's a little bit skewed. It was certainly turnover-based. I think Florida's probably the right side here. And it might be better for you, Drew, that the numbers come down. I really think that's attributed to the fact that Helinski's in the game. Otherwise, this line would be higher.
Yeah, and that was part of the handicap, Robbie. You got a young quarterback. Is he going to play? Is he not? That means he's, pretty banged up. We saw him not playing at the end of the last game. So even if he does play, I doubt he's 100%. And a lot of times I don't think, the market in general, it's tough to say the market doesn't account for it, but, the betting public, I'm not really sure how to put it, doesn't always account for even if the player plays, he's not 100%. Do you feel the same?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, you're talking about a guy who's going to be placed in a situation that he's never been placed in before off of that upset. I wonder how long it took South Carolina to come off cloud nine, and if they get off cloud nine by the time the game starts. And the reverse to that, Drew, is Kyle Trask, for what it's worth, has been extremely impressive as the quarterback of the Florida Gators. I mean, to go to LSU and play the way he did. So I think, even if Helinski was healthy, I would take Trask at this point in time. But I think you get the benefit of the doubt line-wise because Helinski's in the game. And you're right, the public sees that and, bets Helinski.
Robbie, great stuff there. Let's stay in the SEC East, actually. Kentucky at Georgia. Bulldogs, man, laying 25 between the hedges this time, 46.5 the total.
I think all you have to worry about if you feel like you want to play Georgia, if you're a Bulldog alum, if you're one of those guys in Georgia that gets PO'd off of last week's game, what you have to worry about is what their mood is. Obviously, the college football playoff is pretty far out of reach right now with that loss. That's a bad loss. Not that they can't climb back into it, but at this current time, I wonder how the players feel. If they feel like playing, I cannot see a Lynn Bowden-led option offense that beat Arkansas last week denting Georgia whatsoever defensively. Arkansas is just Arkansas, and therefore Kentucky's able to bring an option offense to the party, which Arkansas, to their credit, had very little time to prepare for. And they rushed for 330 yards, barely win the game 24-30. 54 runs last week by Kentucky, only 12 passes. To me, that won't fly against Georgia. And Georgia, like I say, is statistically, aside from turnovers, played a fairly good game last week against South Carolina, but the turnovers bit them. I don't know. Jake Fromm was responsible for all four, threw 3 picks and fumbled. And 3 of those were deep in Kentucky territory. So a lot going on there. It's a big number once again, but I just feel like if Georgia wants to win this thing 45-10, they can win it 45-10, just a matter of where their heads are at.
Robbie, let's head to the Big 12. We got TCU at Kansas State up next. Looks like the Horned Frogs laying 3.5 on the road. 44 the total, Robbie.
Yeah, a little upward movement here for TCU. Both teams off a bye week. But I think what you get here, Drew, in the case of TCU, is finally an offense that they can handle. And Kansas State, when you watch them, they look like Wyoming. And they should look like Wyoming because Chris Kleiman here and Craig Bowl there. Obviously, Kleiman coached under Bowl at North Dakota State. So these prehistoric offenses that they're running just aren't working right now. There's no passing threat from Kansas State. TCU can load the box, try and stop the run. We don't know what went on. I couldn't get a clear read of what went on during the bye week as far as adjustments are concerned for Kansas State, but I don't know that they have the talent personnel-wise or the coaching philosophy offensive-wise to change what's going on with that offense anytime soon. I mean, it works in FCS play because North Dakota just steamrolls people with a ground game and a play-action pass attack, but that's not working here for Bowl in the Mountain West. It's not working for Kleiman. The Mississippi State win seems like such a long time ago. TCU will probably try to up-tempo these guys. K-State had played a pretty soft schedule, up until this point, and they wound up getting blown out by Oklahoma State and Baylor when they ran into tough competition. So I think TCU runs a little up-tempo like those two teams do. Kansas State's defense allowed 7.6 and 7.7 yards per play to Baylor and Oklahoma State. TCU is not on that level, but they can do some damage with a week off themselves offensively here. So I think the line movement is justified in that game.
Robbie, let's head to LSU, Mississippi State here in Starkville, Mississippi. 61 being the total. The Bayou Bengals laying anywhere from 17.5 to 18.5 I'm seeing right now.
I don't see any let up in LSU, Drew. I think I've said it the last couple of weeks here. You hear the quotes from Joe Burrow. They're just on the gas pedal, period. There's no soft spots. There's no sandwich games. There's none of that, hypothetical situational nonsense with LSU right now. And Mississippi State at this point in time is floundering offensively. Tommy Stevens gets pulled last week at halftime by Joe Moorhead, who had him at Penn State, saw enough, put the the true freshman in for good, Garrett Schrader. He went on the road and had to play at Auburn. I think Stevens got hurt in the first quarter of that game. Schrader had to play 3 quarters. And Mississippi State got buried 56-23 by Auburn. They got behind. They couldn't come back. You can see that happening right here. Same way. LSU is so quick out of the gate. If it becomes 14-0, 21-0, they're in deep trouble covering this number. Tennessee outgained Mississippi State last week, 357-267. Started a true freshman quarterback, and Garantano had to come in and play. But I think all signs negative point to Mississippi State. All signs positive point to LSU. Tell you the truth, 18 seems underpriced here. I would probably look towards LSU or not look at all.
Robbie, next game up, considered a rivalry, at least by Tennessee standards, I believe. Tennessee at Alabama. Alabama laying 34.5, upwards near 5 touchdowns, 61.5 the total in Tuscaloosa, Robbie.
Yeah, I'm more interested week by week in Alabama totals than sides. I think you and I have talked about this before, where Alabama can, throw up 45 against just about anybody. And their totals remain in the same place, Drew. I checked it out. The last 5 weeks, those numbers have closed anywhere between 59.5 and 65. That's where we sit here today. Now, 4 of the 5 games went over. Alabama winds up totaling 70, 72, 75, and 90. They had 1 game under. Southern Miss only put up 7 points. I guess the question becomes, can Justin Garantano, who's got a second lease on life now that Brian Maurer got hurt, can they put up 14 points here? Because if they can, Alabama can do the rest. Last year, this game was 58-21 Alabama. It was over in a hurry. Nick Saban took no prisoners. First quarter, I think they even had an interception return for touchdown. So for me, it's probably either play this game over or just don't play it at all. I don't want to lay 34. Alabama's defense has been, it's young. We talked about how many freshmen are starting in that front seven. So they've been giving up some points. We'll see. If Tennessee, if you can trust them to get you 14, I think you can be safe playing over.
Good stuff, Robbie. We got Southern Miss at Louisiana Tech up next. Competitively priced game here, Robbie. Seeing ones or pick'ems. So some shops showing Southern Miss as 1-point favorites on the road. 58 the total in Ruston.
Yeah, the biggest thing I found, Drew, and I fall into this trap a little bit too in Conference USA play. I fall into the trap of immediately assuming, because of past history, that Louisiana Tech is a pretty good defensive team. By CUSA standards, they're a real good defensive team. However, this year, if they didn't play a team named Alcorn State or a team named Texas El Paso, and you just take their other 4 games, they gave up 27, 38, 42, and 49. The defense is not what it's been under Skip Holtz down there. And Southern Miss has a quarterback in Jack Abraham that can light it up. They did so last week. They beat North Texas pretty soundly. Louisiana Tech was out pounding Massachusetts, which is like playing, a glorified high school team right now. So I tend to like Southern Miss here, even though it's on the road. I don't think the venue is that scary. Louisiana Tech's been good in these games, these top-notch games, elite-style games in CUSA over the years. But I just don't know that they're that team right now, Drew. I think Abraham's a better quarterback than Jamar Smith, and I think that passing attack can make Louisiana Tech pay. So I'd probably look Southern Miss in that contest.
He's Robbie Veno. Follow him on Twitter at Rob Veno Sports. Also, coupon code here, guys, for sportsmemo.com. His 7-day all access for just $59 using Veno59 at checkout. That's Veno, Veno 59 at checkout. We got Old Dominion at UAB up next. The Blazers 16.5 at home in Legion Field, 41.5 the total, Robbie.
I'm going to make this one short and sweet, Drew. I'm going to do a little something that I do about mid-season every year. Start to add up ATS and totals combined, full game, first half, second half. If you just blindly played ODU for the game, for the first half and the second half this year, you're 15-3 playing under. Just play them under, 5-1 full game under, 5-1 first half under, 5-1 second half under. So ODU has just become kind of a knee-jerk, mechanical, automatic play towards the under. I don't think any more needs to be said than that as far as this game is concerned. Totals, fairly low by college standards, but ODU's had low totals all season long, continue to go under. Last week, I think the game and first half wound up getting to the over, but the second half stayed under. So like I say, 15-3 combined ODU unders. Take your choice. Game, first half, second half, or play all 3, but that's the way I'd look.
Good stuff, Robbie. Love those stats there on the totals, and we've seen it the move here 45.5 down to as low as 41.5. So a 4-point move. And in consideration, that's almost a 10% move because it's already a low total there at 45.5. Good stuff, Robbie. West Virginia at Oklahoma up next. 63 the total, 33.5. 33.5 is the spread here with Oklahoma laying at home, Robbie.
Yeah, West Virginia loses their quarterback last week. They wind up with Jack Allison, a kid who played a little bit last year, but under a different coaching staff. He's a junior. He was in Dana Holgerson's system. Now he hasn't played at all this year until last week because of injury in Neil Brown's system. Did not fare well in that contest. Don't know that he'll fare well against Oklahoma. Oklahoma, Drew, actually held Texas to a season low total yardage total of 310 last week. And all Lincoln Riley wants to talk about right now is the way his defense is playing. Read like 3 or 4 articles dealing with OU today, and that's what they want to focus on. They know they have an offense. I'll give you a funny number. I mean, it's great that they hold Texas to 310 total yards, a season low. How about Texas held Oklahoma to their season low in total yardage last week, 511. So that shows you where the offense is at right now. When 511 is your low, C.D. Lamb and company can score at will on West Virginia. But right now, they seem to think, and I couldn't disagree with them, that they have a legitimate shot at the 14 playoff and probably moving forward in that said playoff because of the way the defense is going right now. So if it continues to get better, Alex Grinich, big difference in this team, right? He's the new defensive coordinator over there. They brought him in to fix some wounds, and he's certainly done so far for Oklahoma.
Robbie, next game up here in the Big 12, I think is a good one. We got Oklahoma State -3 in the hook, 68.5 the total. It's Baylor versus Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State, the slight favorite at home, Robbie.
Yeah, talked about this one earlier today, Drew, on another show. And, I really like Oklahoma State. The line has gone up 2.5. Whenever something crosses a 3 and goes to 3.5, there's substantial money on the game. And I think rightfully so here. If you go down Baylor's list of opponents so far this season, aside from Iowa State, you won't find a competent offense. At the time, Texas Tech has become a pretty competent offense under Matt Wells. But for Baylor, last week they had Texas Tech shut down until the overtime happened. But dig even further through that list of opponents, and you'll find that Baylor hasn't played a competent rushing offense. When you have Chuba Hubbard and the way Oklahoma State is running for 200 plus every single week, I think Baylor runs into big trouble there because if Oklahoma State can run, Spencer Sanders and company can let loose through the air as well. It's a balanced attack to begin with. It's a, fantastic play calling duo on the sidelines when you have Gleason brought over from Princeton to go with head coach Gundy right now. So I think Baylor fundamentally is has a bit of a problem here as far as stopping the rush is concerned. I think that's going to lead to Oklahoma State points. Don't know that Charlie Brewer and company will match Oklahoma State. That field worth a little bit more than people give it credit for. I think, Oklahoma State kind of flies under the radar in that Big 12, and they're as explosive as anybody. So I think it's a cheap number, 3.5 right now. I would say get it because the way the number has moved, it's only bound to go up a little high. You may see 4.5 by kickoff.
He's Robbie Veno. He's 36-22, 62% in college football for the last month. That's you can see it in the numbers. High volume, 36-22 over the last month, 62% college football. Remember the coupon code VENO59, VENO 59, VENO59 at checkout for a 7-day all access package. We got 2 SEC games to finish up the segment here. Auburn at Arkansas. Looks like War Eagles laying 19.5 on the road, Robbie. 55.5 the total.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of them, Drew. I really don't. I would like to play them because I think it's a good spot for them, but I do fear a little bit the Arkansas skill position players. However, where Arkansas is concerned, they can't get the quarterback position right. Remember last week we had a question from a listener on the Arkansas game where, the question was basically not even a question. It was a statement. Ben Hicks will start over Nick Starkel because Nick Starkel stinks. However, Nick Starkel had taken all the first-team reps last week. He winds up starting, and he did stink. I mean, the question was correct. Whoever authored that question was correct. But Ben Hicks is not that much better. And if he was, he would have been starting the whole year anyway. It's a shame because I think there's a lot of talent at the running back position and Raheem Boyd and the wide receiving core for Arkansas that's really not being utilized or not fulfilling its potential because of the quarterback play here. Auburn can make it look even worse with that defensive line. I mean, Arkansas's offensive line is going to have their hands full. If Gus Malzahn and company, Bo Nix, if they can regroup, they've had a week off, right? Maybe they come back rejuvenated and start scoring some points. I really can't play Arkansas here. Not sure I could get to Auburn either, but that is the side. If I was forced to, that's the side I'd be on.
Yeah, Robbie, I don't know. I agree with your analysis, but I'd add on the fact, betting on Nix to win by 3 touchdowns on the road, I don't know. Just a true freshman on the road. He hasn't really performed well on the road. The Texas A&M game, yeah, but he actually, I felt like he got a lot of help from the playmakers on the outside, but good breakdown there. We got one last game, Texas A&M at Mississippi. Looks like the Aggies -6 on the road in Oxford, 55 the total here, Robbie.
Yeah, and this is a sneaky play here, Drew, or at least a sneaky handicap because Mississippi had 2 starting linebackers ejected from the Missouri game in the second half last week, which means they'll be without 2 starting linebackers to start the contest for the first half in this one, which bodes well for Texas A&M. From where I stand, I think it bodes even better for the total. Mississippi's offense, for those who watched it last week, I mean, now Rich Rodriguez has something going on. He's got a 2-quarterback system that's very, very difficult to prepare for. John Reese Plumlee, the dual threat guy.
He's good.
And then you bring in Matt Corral, who's got a shotgun for an arm, and they interchanged those 2 guys within a series last week against Missouri. And Mizzou's a very good defense that had trouble with it. I think A&M could struggle with it. Right now, Mississippi's offense is starting to get in gear halfway through the season. A&M should be able to take advantage of what's still a porous Mississippi defense. They haven't got it right yet. They're going to be without 2 starting linebackers. Total seems a little low to me here, Drew. And probably side and total both, rightfully so, because linebackers aren't generally compensated for in the line. Last week I took advantage of the Missouri-Mississippi over the total because Cale Garrett, the middle linebacker for Mizzou, out for the season. And it just doesn't get factored into the line either way. It doesn't get factored into the spread, doesn't get factored into the total. I think the first half doesn't get factored in here. If you like A&M, maybe you want to play them first half while the 2 linebackers are sitting on the bench for Ole Miss. It's not like they're a deep bunch that can just roll out 2 more starting linebackers to take their place for a half. So for me, again, A&M, if you like them, don't disagree, but I like the total even more. I think Mississippi's offense is very, very difficult to prepare for right now.
Robbie Veno, great stuff as always. Follow him on Twitter at Rob Veno Sports. And remember the coupon code Veno59 at checkout for a 7-day all access for just $59. Rob, thanks as always. We'll talk with Rob NFL Every Game on the Board podcast. Until then, guys, best of luck. And we'll be back with Teddy Covers to finish off the college football card.